objects. All these things are objects. So we really need a public static main method that will allow us to run a program. And from that, we'd like to be able to see it and interact with it. And so that is where our new class will come into view. So we have a slime finder GUI is what we're going to call this one. Get rid of all this template stuff. Oops, got rid of too much. Okay. Now this thing is going to extend a JPanel. Now I don't want to go into what all that means because it's just too much. Suffice it to say, this is all that we're going to do in this class is just display things so that we can see it and interact with it. It's the whole goal. Oh, I did not mean to do that. That was an accidental. Let's delete that guy. We do not need that. Okay. This is going to be taken care of in a second. So we'll worry about that in a second. I think I didn't. Oh, I didn't spell it right. That's why it's not working. There we go. That's what we want. Silly me. Okay, now we're getting what I was hoping to see. Cool. All right. So what this did is created an action listener, and the action listener is going to be connected to a button, and that button, when you click it, it's going to do some things. So we're going to deal with that in a second. But for now, let's get our main class going. So public static void main, and in this, this is all boilerplate, boring, hard to explain stuff. So let's just put it together. Invoke later. I'm going to do a new runnable. There we go. Cool. And in this run, we're going to basically create and show our GUI. Now this is another method that we're going to have to create. So this isn't the place for it, unfortunately. It created it there because that's what it thought it should do. But I'm here to tell you it doesn't go there. So we're going to pull it out and put it in its own spot. But it has to be static or it won't work. And I'm going to make it. Let's just leave it private. It doesn't matter. It's not going anywhere. All right. So now this will go here. Right on, right on. Okay, so some of the things that we need to do with this create and show GUI are we need to create and set up the window where this program is going to be. Then we'll need to add contents to the window. Finally, display the window. So let's put the Java code in for these. We're going to use a JFrame. We're going to make a new JFrame. And let's just give that thing a title. Slime chunk finder. Seems like a reasonable name, if not dull. So we need to import this son of a gun. And then on it, we want it to exit when you close it. So we're going to set this default close operation of exit on close. It doesn't know what that is, so I have to import that. All right, so that's it for create and set up the window. Not much to it. Now you can get way fancier. There's a lot of other things you can do, but for our program, for our purposes, this is going to be fairly straightforward, simple. So add contents to the window. We're going to add in this new slime finder GUI, which, as you'll notice, we haven't created a constructor for. So we probably need to do that. By default, Java, if you don't have a constructor, will just create the object without actually doing anything to whatever is going on here. But we're going to have a ton of variables. We have all kinds of stuff going on, so we're going to need to implement this constructor. All right, display the window. We want, let's see, what do we want here? We want, well, this is pretty boilerplate stuff as well. We want to pack that son of a gun, just in case you want to see what that is. Causes this window to be sized to fit the preferred size and layouts of its subcomponents. So it's really just saying, all right, let's pack this thing into our frame and get moving forward. All right, frame dot set visible. So we want to be able to see this thing. So we're going to set it equal to true. So we can actually display the window. All right. And that's it for our create and show the GUI. All right. This frame.add slime finder GUI is really kind of pointing us to the next step of what we need to do. So in order to make this actually do something interesting, we have to create that constructor. And there's nothing to be passed into this constructor. It's just going to be its own thing. Now, we have up here at the top extended JPanel. And because we've done that, this thing has a super, and that super constructor needs to be filled. So we're going to call it, and the super is JPanel. We're going to call this new, I'm going to use a grid bag layout because it's just super easy to go with. There's not a lot of thinking around how to get that to work. We're going to import it. So like I said, if we look at super, it brings us into JPanel, and it's using this constructor here. We've given it a layout manager, and that layout manager happens to be a grid bag layout. And cool. So we've said this is the layout we want to use. Now, it's going to be a lot of information, so let's just actually set up all of the methods, even though they're not implemented yet, and then we'll implement them. So we want to set up labels first on our slime finder GUI. Then we want to set up all the input fields. I'm going to use this debug mode concept because when you're debugging through things, you want to be able to have default values being set. So we're going to set those as well if we're in debug mode. And you would set debug mode by creating private static final Boolean debug mode. And we're going to make it true for now. And of course, when we go live with this, we'll set that to false because we'll be using it. We won't be debugging it. But for now, we'll leave it in true. Cool. Now, let's see. And then we want to set up the check button, which is really like, hey, go find the slime go find the slime chunks. Then we're going to set up a response area so we can actually see the values that we find. Then I want to, now this part's a little weird, but we're going to do it anyway. We want to set some constraints on how these items are going to be put together. This one here isn't as big of a deal to understand. In fact, you could probably get away with not even using them, but we're gonna apply it in here anyway. So we're gonna need to set those up. All right. Then finally, we're gonna add all the items to the container, which oddly enough is this J panel that we're talking about. That is the container. Oh, I can't spell that word to save my life. Constraints. There, got it. Cool. Oh, that says all. That's not what I wanted. Add all. Didn't even make it there. Look at that. So many errors. All right. Okay. Okay, so let's go through and set these up one by one. So set up labels. All right. Now, in order to set up these labels, we're going to create, first off, a world seed label, and it's going to be a new J label, and the label will say seed number. Now, I didn't give it the item in front because I'm really going to add it up here. So private, oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to say J label. Is that right? J label, yep. And then import that one. Awesome. So now we have a world seed label. And on that world seed label, we want to set a tool tip text for anybody using this. This is the world seed value for your world. And if you didn't know that, you probably wouldn't be using this program anyway. All right. Let's do another one. X label. New J label. X. We're going to say, most people know where their block, they know the block that they're in, even though if you do F3, you can see the chunk as well, but I think most people are familiar with the block. So we're going to go ahead and use that. All right. So private J label. That one. In fact, let's get some more of these set up because we know they're coming. Z label. Private. What else do we want? J label for the radius. Yes, label. Perfect. I think that's going to be all the ones we care about. So come back down here. Let's fill all these in. We're going to set the tool. Tooltip text to be, this is the X coordinate of your block location in the world. Cool. So then we're going to do the same for Z. So we can just change everything to Z instead of retyping all that. This is your Z coordinate. Cool. And then, let's see, we're going to use the radius label equals new J label. And this is a chunk radius let's just call it chunk radius. And radius label dot set tool tip text. This is the chunk radius to check first line chunks. This is the chunk radius boundary. How's that? Check first line chunks. Cool. I think that'll work. All right. So we've set up labels. We haven't placed the labels. We've just created them as objects in our program, but they're not actually anywhere yet. We're going to add those at the bottom here at add all items to the container. So we've made labels and we'll add them at the end. All right, let's do the same concept for all the input fields. All right. All right, so let's start this time from up top. We're going to name all these text fields, text field, and let's see, we need a world seed text field. We need an X, a Z, and the radius. Radius and Z. I fat finger things a lot. X. There we go. Now we have all four of those things that we're going to need. So world seed text field no, we need to actually create it first. So new J text field, and all right, we'll do that for now. Z text field, same thing. All right, and then we're going to do the same for the X and the radius. So let's give all of those. Radius, X. Awesome. Now we need to set some margins on these things, because otherwise they just hug all the way to the left or right, depending on what you're typing in. But in this case, it's going to all hug to the left. And we want to give it a little bit of space when we're typing things in. So world seed text field. Now this part isn't necessary, but it's just one of those, trying to keep things a little bit nicer. So we're going to set a margin on it. And in that margin, we create these new insets, which are, let's see if it shows you. It's not showing it. Oh, gotta add them first. Okay. Now we see. Okay, so top, left, bottom, and right. Right here. We don't care about the top. We don't care about the bottom. We just really care about the left. So we're going to put in 0 because we don't care about the top. But on the left, let's give it a margin of 10 pixels. 0, 0. I don't care about those guys either. We're going to do this for each of these. Alright, so we need to put in X text field, Z text field, and the radius. Oops. Alright, so we've set the margins on the input fields. Again, we've created text fields, but we haven't put them into the container yet. That's what this last piece is for. All right, again, this debug mode, we've set it up so that it'll go off, and we don't have to type in numbers into these fields once they're on the container. So we're going to set up default values so we don't have to worry about that. And I'm going to use default values based on my world that I've currently created. All right, so I'm just going to copy these in because some of these numbers are just too many to write. So we're going to set the text for the world seed text field to this long number here. The value of where I was doing this testing from for the X was 257 and Z was 117. The radius, I'm just going to set it as 1. It could be, that one's not as important to set, but we're going to give it something. So these are going to be default values when debug mode is on. Great. So the text fields are currently fully set up. Now let's work on the check button. This is the button that will run our slime finder. All right. So this is a J button. It's an object that we're going to need to create up here as well. So we'll start with that. So we have a J button that's going to be called, we'll call it the check button. All right, we have to import that one. And let's see, check button equals a new J button. And on that button, we're going to just say, let's say find slime chunks. All right. Hopefully that works. That's a lot of characters. Maybe instead, just say find. That'll work just fine. All right. Check button. Got more to do to this thing. So we're going to set the vertical text position. We're going to set it to the bottom. Alignment. Oh, man. Which one do I use? I forgot. Okay. Here's what we'll do. Because I know it comes from abstract button. Dot bottom. And then we just have to import. Oh, things are going nutty. Here we go. Import that, and this should work. There we go. Check button dot. Let's set the horizontal position now. And we want to make that abstract button dot center. All right, so all this is doing is just setting up that find text to be at the bottom of the button, but in the center. That's all it's showing. Nothing exciting. Then, this is actually the exciting part. We're going to add an action listener. Now, this refers to this class. So we're adding any action listeners that are in this class, which will be defined here, to this button. So when this button's clicked, it will shoot off this method. And this action event, if you were to look into it, it would be, oh, a button was pressed. Honey? All right, so action button. Yeah, so this is going to show that there's a button pressed. And since that's the only action that's going to be performed in this entire application for now, we can actually just code it up without caring about what the action event was, because we know it's going to be a button. All right, anyway, that was a little much yet, but that's what this piece right here is all about. Check button, we've added an action lister. Great. Now, let's move on. We're going to create a response area. This is where all your answers will show up. So again, we're going to have some sort of object we want to create some variables on. So we're going to say private J text. Is it field or area? I thought it was area. Let's see. Yeah, JText area. Probably doesn't have it. There we go. JText area. And we're going to call this, this is where the answer text is going to be. Or response. I guess I should call it response, huh? Response. Text area. All right. So let's bring that down here. We're going to set it up with a new J text area. We want to give it a particular length or width. Let's say width and height. Let's say response area width, response area height. All right, we don't have these yet, so we have to make them. And so we're going to create another private static final. This time it's going to be an integer. It's going to be this response area width, and we're going to use we're going to use 50. Let's create another one for height. And we'll do this one as 100. Height. Cool. Okay. So now our JText area has a particular size to it. All right. Another thing we want to do is in the response text area, we don't really want to be able to edit it. There's really no reason to, so we're gonna set that to false. Then we will also would like to set the margins. This is very similar to what we saw above, but this one, we kind of do care about the top. We want some With some white space around this information we're getting, so it's a little easier to pick out. So the top's going to be 5, left 30, bottom 5, and right 30. So that's going to be a little margin that our text won't go past. Okay. All right. Now, this next piece is if we had a lot of information that comes into this response text area, we'd like it to be scrollable. That'd be a lot more useful for us. So let's come back all the way up here to our variables. Type in J, what is it called again? Scroll pane. That's what it was. J scroll pane. We're going to have to import that. We'll call it scrolling response text area. It's a long name, but it's got amazing results. So in this one, let's see. We're going to say new J scroll pane. But what you pass in there is the response text area. And now, this doesn't automatically mean we're going to have a scroll pane, but we can set some constraints on it so that we do, or not constraints, we can set some parameters on it. Okay. Okay, so now we have to work on these constraints. These are a little harder to explain, so I'll do my best. We want to add some constraints as an object. We're going to give it a variable name, and then it's a new grid out of constraints. Just your basic default grid bag constraints object. Now, this constraints dot grid width, we're going to set that. Such that that this component will be the last component in its column or row. So every time we add an item, this constraint will set it up such that it will be the last component that is being added. You could set that up differently with a different constraint, like relative or whatever. We're going to use remainder. Don't worry if you don't understand that. It's not that big of a deal. Just makes things a little clearer when they're being shown. Grid bag constraints for this one, we're setting up a constraint so that when we resize this thing, it's either going to be horizontal, in this case horizontal but not vertical, or you could pick the other way, but this is how it will resize. Not necessarily always what you want, but we're just going with it. Then actually I don't think I want that. I want it to go both horizontally and vertically. So let's get rid of that. Let's just go to both of them. Just for simplicity. Constraints, we're going to set the weight x 1.0. We're going to set the y. Come on. To 1.0 also. And we can kind of look at what that is. I guess we can't really look at it. It sort of shows, specifies how to distribute extra horizontal space. So again, it's really not something we want to get too deep into. And then finally, we're going to return these constraints. Now, I advise if you're going to use any of this information, go ahead and look that up and try to understand it. And that's probably going to be your best bet there. All right. Cool. So we have in our Slime Finder GUI constructor all these things set up except this last one. Once we add it to the container, we can actually pull it up and you'll be able to see it. It won't work yet because we haven't implemented this action perform, so it won't actually do anything, but you'll be able to see it. So let's get to that point. All right, let's add all these items to this JPane container. All right. So let's start. So this is going to be in order that they would show up because of that. This remainder bit that we talked about up here. And so we're going to pass in these constraints to add world seed label, and then next is world seed text field. We want it to be right there below that world seed label. We're going to do this for the X label. Oops. X label. And then let's see, X text field. And try to do this as fast as possible, even though I'm already taking a long time. Let's see, we want to do this for the radius, label, and text field. Then we want to add the check button. This one doesn't need constraints to it, but the scrolling response text area apparently does. There we go. Awesome. Now we have the whole thing set up. We could try to run this, see if we made mistakes anywhere. This doesn't do anything, so realize when I run this, looking at the button, it probably, well, not probably, it definitely will not work. But let's see what we get here. So we're going to run the main class, which is sitting in here, right there. So we're going to run it and see what happens. See if we messed anything up. Nope. Came up. So there's our default value sitting in there. And each of the labels is saying what the next thing is going to be. And then there's your find button. This is the response area. So if we click find, like I said, nothing's happening because, well, we don't have that defined yet. We can change these numbers. Still doesn't work, obviously, but all these things can work. Now in here, you'll notice I don't get a caret because we made that so that it's not editable. We could have added another button that says close, but we're just going to use the X. All right. So everything visually worked just fine, with the exception of this action performed. So that should be the next step that we will try to accomplish. All right. Okay. Now, if you're familiar with exceptions, I like to, knowing that there could be errors in this work that I do, I want it to catch any of those exceptions and throw them up. Now, it's not generally a good practice to have a generic exception that you catch. In fact, we're going to change that once we get moving. I just don't want it to show red yet. So for now, though, this is our general structure. So we're going to put the action perform work in here and then catch it, throw up a message for the user to know what they might have done wrong. It's not going to be very explicit. It'll just be enough to make me feel better about it. Anyway, so try. So what we're going to do first is we're going to grab, we're going to grab the world seed, and we need to grab it from, so keep in mind, I want to reiterate this, when an action performed happens, that means in our particular case that the button was pressed, and hopefully it also means that there was data in these text fields, and not only data but proper data. And that proper, if it's improper data, let's say we're expecting a number but then somebody tries to pass in their name, it's going to throw an exception. We want to catch that exception and say, hey, you should probably throw a number in, or put a number in that input and not a name. So we're going to assume that they did the right thing for this try, though. We're going to say that we want to get from the text field, we want to parse the long number from that text field. So world seed text field dot get text, and this will give us the world seed that they pass in. Next, we're going to get the X block. Let's see, the X block coordinate that they're going to put into parse int, that they're going to put into the X text field. And let's see, so X text field dot get text. So from this string, there should be a number. Give me the integer from that number and assign it to X block coordinate. We'll do the same thing for Z. And then we'll do the same thing for the radius. Radius. All right. Now, as mentioned before, this formula that we found, or that we used from chunk, this formula is a slime chunk, actually uses chunk position X and Z. So we have to convert that immediately when using this GUI, because otherwise these block coordinates don't mean anything to us. Or it doesn't mean anything to this program anyway. So what we want to do here, or what I'm going to do, is go ahead and create the X chunk coordinate. And we can get that, if you remember, from the block get chunk X block coordinate. And that's going to give us the X chunk coordinate. Now we'll do the same for Z. And we'll have what we need to implement this slime chunk finder. we're going to create a brand new slime chunk finder from the world seed that we just found from the text, as well as the X chunk coordinate that we calculated from the X blocks coordinate and the Z chunk coordinate as well. Now we have an object that is this class. We've built it. It's ready to roll. In order to do anything, we just need to call these methods, or this particular method. Get surrounding slime chunks for the radius. Boom, we have this list, but we need to be able to display it correctly. So you can't just jump ahead and grab it. So we're gonna, or I'm gonna throw in a bunch of different pieces that will make this response text more readable. All right. Let's see. So response text area. The very first thing I'm gonna throw in there is some sort of divider, and I haven't defined what that is, but I will do that up here. I'm actually gonna copy in one that I use a lot. This one. So it's just a long series of lines followed by new line characters here and here. All right. So we're just saying, all right, we're going to start a section with these lines, or with this line. Next, what we'll do is what I would like to do here is determine and show if the current location is in a slime chunk. So I want to show that first because I kind of care. Am I in a slime chunk already? Maybe I don't care about all the ones around me. All right. So location at let's see, at block XZ, which is the X block coordinate plus and that's going to be separated by the Z block coordinate. So we're going to pin that in there. So this is saying at the location at block XZ, if chunk dot is slime chunk world seed XZ. So if it's a slime chunk, then in the response text area, we're going to append the string that says is a slime chunk. And then let's give it a couple new line characters to drop. Give a space between this answer and the next thing's coming. However, if it was not a slime chunk, we also want to say something. So in this case, is not a slime chunk. Oops, there we go. All right, so we've determined and then shown if the current location is in a slime chunk. Then we want to show all of the surrounding within the radius, of course. Slime chunks. All right. So we're going to actually make a new method. It's called show surrounding slime chunks. And in this method, we'll pass in this finder so that it can do the work, and the chunk radius that we're going to care about. All right, we'll create that here in a second, but we want to end this section by appending a div. So in here, we're going to be making a series of statements. Response text area appends there's a series of them that will happen in here. And then when they're all done finding them, we will close off the section with another divider. Then a sort of cleanup item will be to set the caret position. I don't think this matters, actually, now that I'm looking at this. Let's not include that. This is enough. Okay. All right, so then all that's really left here is we need to create this method to give us the series of appends that will show all of the slime chunks. All right, so one thing I want to do, as I mentioned before, we're going to sort this son of a gun. So let's say that we're doing that by adding the statement closest to farthest. So all I'm doing there is adding a statement, letting you know it's sorted, even though you'll be able to see that it's sorted. Response text area, append. Okay, so the next piece I'm adding here is their headers, so that we know what each of the columns looks like. So we're building sort of a table, and this table will display the information. That's the easiest way to show lots of data. This is in a table, so that's how we're going to do it. And I need to create another string that is going to be 2 tabs, so I don't have to look at it. All right, that probably totally wasn't necessary, but I did it anyway. All right, response area, append. This time we're going to add the word chunk. So it's going to give us our address for the chunk that is a slime chunk. Response text area append. The X block range, in case that's the kind of information we care about. Response text area dot append Z block range of that chunk that is a slime chunk. All right, and that last one doesn't get a tab because it's the end of it. So we just do a new line. All right, So again, as I mentioned, these are our headers for our data table that you're going to see. This is totally unnecessary. I can't spell. Unnecessary comment about the sorting order. All right. Then let's see. We want to invoke that finder to get all the slime chunks. So finder dot get surrounding chunks with the radius that we're being given. This thing returns a list of slime chunk distant pair. So we're going to say list of slime chunk. Oh, of course it's not going to be there. Chunk distance pairs. Pair. And we'll call that locations. Because why not? Bring that in. Bring that in. Right on. So running this at this point would show just headers. We haven't actually added the locations yet. We want to do that. And so in order to do that, we'll need to iterate through each of these. This pair. Locations. Let's say, let's change that to location. Location. And each one of these locations, we're going to put into a response text. Let's see. String.format. So we want these to not have crazy decimal places. So we're going to say just give us 3 decimal places after the whole number. Location dot. Okay, so yeah, that's going to be the distance. According to our header here, we want the first one to be a distance. And then plus tab. Then we want to add, or we want to concat on this string. Let's see. The next one, which is the chunk, get value dot get x. So this get value is the slime chunk distant pair. It's the actual chunk. So the location chunk is what this is. We're going to get the x from that chunk. Plus, we're going to bring in the z now. But we need to add a concatenation plus symbol in there. Whew. And then, let's see. Oh, go back up. Put that in there. And then add the tab so that it lines up with the headers. Right on. Now we need to add the X block range and the Z block range. So this is going to be kind of similar to these others. So let's see what we're going to change. This, not get X, but dot get X block index low. And this one will be dot get x block index high. This will be dot get z block index high. And this one will be dot z block index low. All right. And then that's it. I don't think we need that last tab. And we're going to put this text in the response text area. Oh, I didn't spell it right. I was like, why? Response. Okay. Response text area pinned, and then this response text goes right in there. All right. So I think now this show surrounding slime chunks will, let's see, how do I do that? Oh, okay, back out. Okay, so that will show us the string that we need right here. And if I did everything correctly, which I think I did, this thing is done. So let's take a look. Let's run it, see what happens. So, oops, I did not mean to do that. Okay, let's run it, see what happens. So I have my default values in there because I didn't want to type anything. Boom, look at that. The location of this place is not a slime chunk. And then from the closest to farthest, there's only one, it looks like, that it says. Now, having debugged through and seen this on a map, I know that this isn't correct. This chunk is not correct. This X block range may be correct. I don't know about that one. Z block range. I'll have to look at this to make sure that I typed that all in correctly. So let's take a look down here again. Let's see, get X. Oh, look at that. I totally didn't put the right thing there. That was supposed to be Z. So get X, get Z. Cool. Get X blocks index low, get X blocks index high. Is that correct? X blocks range, yeah. Z and the Z. Cool. I think that's correct. All right. Let's try that one more time. Ideally, of course, you would write tests around all this stuff with known slime chunks to make sure that you got the right thing. 17.7, that's correct. That is correct. Now, I'm going to show you something that can help us decide if we've gotten this thing correct. Okay. So here is a slime finder. Now this is kind of obviously a lot nicer because you can actually see it, but I wanted to write my own. So you can see down here, I can't move my cursor without you missing it. There's a chunk 17.7, and that's what we found. All right, so let's take a look and test it for a wider amount. So let's say a chunk radius of 5. Oh, it looks like we ran into another error. This is going all the way across. We don't like that because how are you supposed to read that, right? So we want this piece to drop down so that it'll look more like a table. All right. So our second bug is inherent somewhere in here. So the header was correctly doing it, but now this response text is not. So we want that to drop down with a new line every time. All right, let's try that again. All right, change that to 5 and see if we got a table. It's much better, much easier to look at. All right, now let's bring in our testing map. You can see the seed's the same one that I've chosen. The X and Z are the same ones I've chosen. That's the red dot here. And the chunk radius of 5 is everything from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So somewhere around here, just a big circle around this. And so we need to decide which ones are there. So a distance of 1 away is 17.7, which is this guy. 1.414 away, 17.6, which is this guy. And then we have the next one, 19.6. So we can keep doing it that way, but they're kind of hard to find sometimes. I imagine that's this one, 19.6. But we can just go over here and look at the green ones that we think are going to be in there. So 15.3 is sitting right there, 15.3. Is this one in? 19.3. Yes, 19.3 is second from the bottom. 25, that's in there. 26, that's in there. You already looked at that. Is 1911, that's there. This one shouldn't be because it's outside of the radius. 2111 is certainly not. And then this 1411 is in there. 4.472 away. 1210, that's exactly 5 away, so we're definitely at the edge. Now this one won't be there because it's outside of that radius. But I think we covered them all. All the ones that would be there are showing. 21.4, that must be outside of the radius. Yeah, we looked at that one, 19.3. Good. So it looks like things worked. We got it in the, only had a couple little bugs, and there we are. These X block ranges, you check those out if that's how you wanted to see things. That certainly would help you set up the exact spot where you would need to dig out things for your slime farm, if that's what you're doing this for. And yeah, so it looks like everything worked out great. We can try to test this also on maybe another value. Let's give that a go real quick. Let's try this spot right here. So let's type in, was it 327? I already forgot. 327, let's say 90. And go. And so that is in a slime chunk. So we'll put that 327.90. Find is a slime chunk. Look at that. It wasn't lying. Here's the slime chunk, and the closest to farthest. Now this one's going to show that the one that you're in is the closest, so there's no need to go anywhere. And certainly it is. All right, so that's the program. Oh, you get to see what I've been watching. Some blacklist. All right, that's the program. There's nothing more to it. Pretty straightforward, simple, tiny little program. I will have this program as a jar that you could certainly ask me for. I will freely send it to you. Put a comment in my video there at the bottom, and I will send it to you We can talk, get our emails. If you've got any cool stuff that you want to send to me, or you want to talk about, or anything Minecraft related, programming, whatever, let's get to talking. I love this stuff. All right. So that's this program. I'll even send it, of course, the full Java file if that's what you want, because I honestly don't care. It's just fun to do, and you can make it better. You can do different things with it, however you want. It's free for everybody. So, yeah, it's funny because it is, it really is the same thing as that slime chunk finder, except that's probably better because you can actually visually see the map of where you are versus where the slime chunks are. But I like a challenge, so I went ahead and wrote my own, and it could easily, with just a little bit more knowledge, be turned into almost something exactly like what they have on that webpage. So we're not very far from it. We're actually almost right there. Yeah, cool. So this has been Abraham with Nerdin. We're gonna use this to determine where our chunk is that we want to start building a slime farm, so we can start making sticky pistons and whatever else you build, flying stuff with our slime chunks, with our slime. And yeah, I need to stop rambling and shut the heck up and let you guys get to your lives. All right, peace out.